You're about to witness a choice that defied an entire kingdom's expectations. This isn't just a story of love, but of a man who saw a soul where others saw only shadow. If you believe true character lies beneath the surface, you'll want to see how this unfolds. Stay until the end, because the twist will leave you breathless. And True Kindness Tales family, don't forget to subscribe. Stories like this are our heartbeat, and your support lets us keep them alive. The carriage of the Duke of Evermere crunched up the gravel drive of Viscount Lawton's estate like an omen. Inside, Damien, the young duke, steeled himself. This was not a social call, but a transaction. His ancient line needed an heir, the Viscount's impoverished nobility needed capital. A marriage of convenience, the terms already whispered over port. He was to inspect the Viscount's prized asset, his eldest daughter, Lady Isidora, famed across the county for a beauty so sharp it could cut glass. You'll take the pretty one, Lawton had declared with a merchant's confidence at their last meeting. Damien had merely nodded, his heart a tomb of quiet resignation. He was received in the sun-drenched parlor. Lady Isidora was, indeed, a vision. Hair the color of spun gold, eyes of summer sky blue, and a smile practiced to dazzle. She performed perfectly, playing the pianoforte with technical precision, reciting French poetry, her laughter a calculated tinkle. Yet her eyes, Damien noted, held a cold, assessing light. They scanned his attire, estimated the worth of his signet ring, and found him satisfactory. She was a portrait, vivid and vacant. Beside her, perched on a low stool by the towering bookcase like an afterthought, sat the other sister. Lady Mara, the rejected one. The Viscount had not even bothered to properly introduce her. My second, Mara, he'd muttered, as one might acknowledge a piece of modest furniture. Where Isidora was golden light, Mara was shadow and ink. Her dress was of a faded gray, her dark hair simply braided, and a faint, silvery scar traced a path from her temple to her cheek, the legacy of a childhood accident, hastily explained and just as hastily ignored. But it was her eyes that arrested Damien. Not for any conventional beauty, but for their startling focus and depth. While Isidora performed, Mara's gaze was on the spaniel wheezing by the hearth. Without a word, she slipped a piece of seed cake from her plate and placed it gently on the floor for the creature. When a young maid stumbled while carrying a heavy tea tray, Mara was the only one who flinched, her hands twitching as if to help, held back only by the rigid decorum of the room. The Viscount, sensing Damien's fleeting attention, loudly praised Isidora's embroidery. Show the Duke the landscape you're working on, my dear. Such delicate hands, Isidora preened, but Damien's eyes drifted to the book Mara had hastily set aside. It was Spenser's The Faerie Queen, a dense, allegorical epic. Do you enjoy Spenser, Lady Mara? He asked, his voice cutting through her father's pomp. A stunned silence fell. Mara looked up, shocked to be addressed. The Viscount's face tightened. Mara dabbles, he dismissed. But Mara, meeting Damien's gaze, saw not pity, but genuine inquiry. I find the Red Cross Knight's journey a compelling metaphor for the soul's struggle with faith and truth, she said, her voice softer than her sister's, but infinitely more resonant. It wasn't a rehearsed line, it was a thought. In that moment, the glittering parlor, the beautiful Isidora, the boasting Viscount, all faded. Here was a mind, a person, living in the silent margins of her own home. Damien felt the first crack in his resignation. He asked another question, about the poem's representation of deceit. Mara's answer was witty, insightful, and ended with a quiet, self-deprecating smile that made her scar curve softly. Damien found he could not look away. The transaction had suddenly become complicated. The formal dinner that evening was an exercise in agony. Damien was seated beside Isidora, who discoursed on the latest fashions and the dullness of the countryside. Every so often, he caught glimpses of Mara at the far end of the table, speaking gently to her elderly aunt, patiently peeling an apple for her. The Viscount, drinking heavily, grew more brazen. A union of our houses, your grace. Imagine the beauty of the offspring, he boomed, winking at Isidora, who blushed prettily. Mara kept her eyes on her plate, a slight flush of embarrassment on her neck. Damien felt a surge of revulsion. He was not a bull at auction. Seeking air, he excused himself to the moonlit terrace. The garden below was silvered and still. And there, he saw her. Mara stood by a neglected patch of night-blooming jasmine, her face tilted up, her expression one of such profound loneliness it struck him physically. He moved down the steps, his boots quiet on the gravel. She started, turning quickly, wiping a cheek. Your Grace, I did not see you. I'll retire. Please, don't, he said, and the earnestness in his own voice surprised him. I find the company indoors stifling. She paused, unsure. He gestured to the jasmine. A resilient flower. It thrives in the dark. It is overlooked by day, Mara replied quietly. But its scent, I think, is sweeter for having waited. It was not a lament, but a simple truth. They walked, speaking not of lineage or lands, but of books, of astronomy, of her secret charity work teaching the tenants, children to read, of his stifled dream to reform the harsh mining laws on his northern estates. She spoke with passion that lit her face from within, transforming her plain features into something radiant, compelling. He learned of her scar, a fall from a tree while trying to rescue a fledgling crow. He learned of her mother's death, and how she'd become the unseen caretaker of the household's heart. Isadora is the jewel of the house, she said without bitterness. I am its foundation stone. Unseen, but necessary. A foundation is what keeps a house from crumbling, Damien said, stopping to face her. A jewel can be removed and worn by anyone. In the moonlight, her eyes were pools of liquid obsidian, holding intelligence, kindness, and a strength Isadora's flawless blue eyes could never possess. The cold duty he had arrived with had melted, replaced by a swelling, terrifying warmth. He realized with a jolt that he was seen by her, not as a duke, but as Damien. And he saw her, truly saw Mara, for the first time anyone ever had. The choice before him was no longer a transaction, but a crossroads for his very soul. To choose Isadora was to choose the expected, a life of quiet despair adorned with beauty. To choose Mara was to choose authenticity, a partnership of minds, a love built on the bedrock of true recognition. The risk was monumental, the scandal would be fierce. But as she smiled at something he said, a real, unguarded smile that reached her eyes, he knew his path was irrevocably altered. The next morning, the household assembled in the drawing room, thick with expectation. The Viscount was practically rubbing his hands together. Isadora was a vision in lace, a confident smile on her lips. Mara stood by the window, a gray specter once more, her moment of moonlight connection seemingly a dream. The formal offer was to be made. Damien's palms were damp, his heart a drum against his ribs. This would be a declaration of war on convention. The Viscount cleared his throat. Your Grace, we are honored by your attention. To our family, my daughter, Isadora, is prepared to bring grace and beauty to Evermere. He gestured like a showman. Damien took a deep breath. He looked at Isadora, then deliberately turned his gaze, slow and steady, to Mara. He saw her tense, her eyes widening in confusion and dawning alarm. Lord Loudon, he began, his voice carrying the full weight of his title. You are correct. I have come seeking a wife. A woman of grace, intelligence, compassion, and strength. A woman who sees the world not as a mirror for her own reflection, but as a garden to be tended. A woman whose kindness is not a performance, but her very nature. Isadora's smile grew triumphant. She took a graceful step forward. Mara seemed to shrink, believing every word a cruel contrast meant to highlight her lack. Damien continued, never breaking his gaze from Mara's horrified one. For the past day, I have had the privilege of observing both your daughters. One has been polished to shine. The other has been forged in kindness to be strong. He then took 3 decisive steps across the room, the world holding its breath. He stopped before Mara, whose face was now pale with shock. He went down on one knee. A gasp ripped through the room. The Viscount made a strangled sound. Isadora's perfect face shattered into incredulous fury. Damien took Mara's trembling hand. It was cold. Lady Mara, he said, his voice dropping, intimate and fierce for her alone, yet audible to all. You are the foundation. You are the resilient flower. You are the truest heart I have ever encountered. I did not come here seeking a portrait to hang on my wall. I came seeking a companion for my soul. Will you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife, my duchess, and my equal? The silence was absolute. Mara looked from his earnest face to her father's apoplectic one, to her sister's venomous glare. Tears welled in her eyes, not of sadness, but of a lifetime of invisibility finally being shattered by a light so bright it was blinding. She saw not pity in his eyes, but reverence. He was choosing the scar, the quiet, the book, the kindness. He was choosing her. Her voice, when it came, was a clear, strong bell in the silent room. Yes. Chaos erupted. The Viscount roared. Isadora shrieked. But Damien stood, placing Mara's hand firmly on his arm, shielding her with his body. He faced the storm, his authority as Duke a palpable cloak around them both. The matter is settled, he stated, leaving no room for argument. He looked at Mara, and for the first time in her life, she stood tall, not as the rejected sister, but as the chosen one. The pretty one had been left standing, a beautiful, empty vessel, while the Duke walked away with the treasure he had discovered in the shadows, a treasure of substance, of soul, of true and lasting kindness. And that, dear viewer, is the power of seeing beyond the surface. The Duke didn't just get a wife, he found a partner who would help him build a legacy of compassion. Mara didn't just get a title, she received the recognition her beautiful soul had always deserved. Their marriage, by all historical accounts, was one of profound love and mutual respect, legendary for its happiness. If this story reminded you that true worth is never skin deep, give this video a like. And to join our community of kindness seekers, make sure you subscribe to True Kindness Tales. We have so many more forgotten stories of heart and honor to share with you. Until next time, look deeper.